This is the Undefeated Sports Network. Sport Court, and court is in session.
What's up, everybody, and welcome in. This is the Undefeated Sports Network. This is Sport Court. For this show, as always, we have our guy Ace, the leader of men when it comes to all things sports official. What's
Leader
up,
of
Ace?
men.
How we doing tonight?
I like it. What's up, Tarbill? How you doing, brother?
Doing good, man. It's been a while since we've got to join each other on the airwaves here, so looking forward to chalking it up, talking some Chicago sports as always. As you know, a lot of things have transpired since we did our last show, so we got a lot of hot topics to talk about.
Absolutely.
First and foremost, Justin fucking Fields. Kid has
Justin
been an
fucking
absolute
Fields.
animal the last few weeks, man.
So, I don't want to toot my own horn, but ever since I tweeted this tweet right here, this was the Bears were going into the game against New England, and I said, man, this game screams Justin Fields breakout game.
That you did.
And since then, the Bears have put up 30 points a game.
It's
I'm
crazy,
not saying
man.
I'm not saying I was the key that unlocked this Bears offense, but I'll take credit for it.
So before we get into how much we're loving the play of Justin Fields right now and all the other facets of what the Chicago Bears team is, tonight, guys, we have a special show for you. So we're going to go over not only the Chicago Bears' recent heartbreaking loss to the Detroit Lions, we're going to talk a little bit of everything towards the tail end of the show. We're going to go into what team has the brightest future here in Chicago out of all of the Chicago sports teams. So Bulls, Bears, Hawks, Sox, Cubs. Might as well take the Hawks off because I don't think anyone's going to pick them. But
No.
we got a fun show lined up for you. So thank you guys for joining us. We do appreciate it as always. And let's get into it, Angelo. So obviously the last 4 weeks, Justin Fields and Luke Getsy, along with the Chicago Bears offense as a whole, have seemed to really come into a groove where they're unlocking the potential of this young quarterback. They're understanding and recognizing what works best when it comes to having a running quarterback as a weapon like you do in Justin Fields. I mean, you look at what Justin Fields has done over the last 4 weeks, and he's actually the leading rusher in the NFL with 551 rushing yards. Obviously, the game before last, he broke Michael Vick's season single game record for rushing yards as a quarterback. The only person who holds a record higher than him now would be Lamar Jackson with that playoff appearance.
Right.
So you get to a point where you're looking at Justin Fields and all the things that he's doing right, all of the grit and determination that he has as a passer and as a rusher, because he's used his legs substantially over the last few weeks, to the point where today in the press conference he said he's going to stop running suicides as much during the week because he's going to be running on the weekend. And, you know, a lot of people are still doubting Justin Fields. There are a lot of guys out there that are saying, hey, until I see him throw a 300-yard passing game, I don't buy in. He's not the guy.
So
to me, I disagree.
Remember how I told you
Go ahead.
a couple days ago that I had this little spiel I wanted to give, right, about Justin Fields?
Yeah.
So to me, that whole narrative of like, oh, I'm not going to buy into him until he has a 300-yard passing game. If the Bears had won, let's just say, you know, the last 3 games, right, and Justin played the way he did, would people be complaining about how little he's passed the ball?
No, they would
No.
not. It's
Right.
strictly because they've been taking losses. It's, us as Chicago fans, we do it a lot. We always try to find a flaw in something. And
Right.
right now, I will tell you, in my almost 30 years on this planet, this is the most exciting Bears team that I've ever gotten to watch.
Yeah.
To me, I've never been, and you know, I've never been a guy that's defensive football minded, to the fact where those 10-3 games, 10-14 games that are defensive battles all night drive me crazy. I like seeing offense out there on the field scoring, putting up points. I would much rather see the situation that we're in now as Chicago Bears fans, where this team is consistently scoring right around an average of 30 points per game, I do believe.
Yep.
And looking really good while they're doing it. I mean, this team is being dynamic. Luke Getsy has started to recognize what works. Unlike Matt Nagy, who always tried to fit a square peg in a round hole, so to speak, Luke Getsy has really tailored this offense to the strengths of Justin Fields over the past few weeks, and it's shown greatly on the field. I mean, they come out against Detroit. What's the first play of the game?
A run.
Quarterback run for 12 yards, I think it was. And to me, that's exciting, man. As I said, I've never been a defensive football guy. Yes, obviously you need a defense to be better than the Chicago Bears defense has been the last few weeks to be competitive in the league. But as I said many times during the offseason and the start of this year, this season is all about the development of Justin Fields. What happens with Justin Fields? What is his arc? Do Coach Eberflus and the general manager trust the process with Justin Fields? Do they see the improvement that they need to see in order for him to be the guy for them moving forward? And I think without a doubt, you saw it in the Ryan Poles presser the other day. He was quoted saying that he's really happy with the development that Justin's made, and he sees a bright future for him. He's progressing in all the right ways. I totally agree with that. I mean, you see Fields, although he hasn't put up the 300-yard passing game that some of the more old school guys would like to see, he has in turn been electric, made plays when it counts, honestly, when he needs to make plays. He had that shitty interception on Sunday, and what's he do? He goes out and rushes right past the guy that intercepted him for 60-plus yards and a touchdown.
Yep.
To me, as long as Justin Fields is doing everything in his power to win football games, that's a leader of men to me, and that's exactly what you want in your quarterback. I personally don't care if he rushes for 250 yards and throws for 40. If we win by a touchdown, that's fine by me.
Right.
Obviously,
right. Overall, what do you want your quarterback to do? You want your quarterback to
games.
lead your team to victory. However it happens. I don't care. Listen, would it be awesome to see him, sling the ball 400 yards in a game, 6 touchdowns? Yeah, of course it would be. But
who do we have around him to do that right
exactly,
now?
right? Like, people are like, oh,
that's what it boils down to.
What do you want the guy to do? Stand in the pocket and just get annihilated, or throw it to guys and it goes right through their hands? The guy is under duress all the time.
Right.
And
you've got one of the worst passing offensive lines in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I will give the offensive line credit. They've been tremendous against the run block the last few weeks. And the Bears are number 1 in rushing yards in the NFL.
They're number 1, but Fields definitely helps contribute to that. You know what I mean? If you look
absolutely.
at Montgomery's numbers and Herbert's numbers, they're not anything.
They haven't been great,
right.
But that's fine. I think this year you hang your head on that horse. Of course, long-term sustainability-wise, we don't want to see an unfortunate injury. I'll say I won't name any previous quarterbacks to jinx Justin Fields, but there have been plenty of quarterbacks who have had short career spans because all they did was run the ball.
Right.
However, I don't think that's the case. As I've alluded to previously, you've seen Justin Fields' ability to throw the deep ball both at Ohio State and in flashes here in the NFL with the Chicago Bears and really no receivers around him. Everyone expected Chase Claypool to come in and have an immediate impact. Well, Chase Claypool has to learn the playbook. Chase Claypool has to get used to Justin Fields, and they're staying after practice,
right.
Working on timing together, doing exactly what they need to do to get that rhythm down. obviously we've seen it work with Cole Kmet over the last few weeks. Cole Kmet, in just the last 2 weeks, 2 touchdowns in each game, and he's looked really good, looked almost rejuvenated. I mean, Cole Kmet didn't have a touchdown before the Miami game. So
yeah, I want to say he might have the second most touchdowns by a tight end.
I believe that is right after last week.
Yep.
So, Justin Fields is doing everything in his power, right? That's what it boils down to. He's going out there and he's making the team he's putting the team in a position to win games. Whether they win the games or not, at the end of the day, nothing that's happened over the last 3 weeks, except maybe the pick against the Lions last week, is the fault of Justin Fields.
Right.
Ultimately, he's done everything in his power that he can do as a quarterback, as a rusher, as an overall weapon and athlete out there. And he's left blood, sweat, and tears on the field. Quite literally, his ear was bleeding last week.
Yep.
And noticeably, and he stayed in the game, didn't even worry about it until the game was over. Justin Fields is a resilient young man, I do have to say. And he's got the size to be a running quarterback that a lot of other quarterbacks lack. I mean, he's big, 225 pounds. He's stockier for a quarterback, but I don't want to say stocky in a bad way, but he's got a bigger build to him naturally.
Right.
So he can go and absorb those hits, and he's been relatively smart about it the last few weeks. I mean, he's ran out of bounds. He's gotten down, slid when he needs to. Obviously, he took a pretty nasty shot there in the end zone that actually ended up putting the Detroit defender out for the rest of the game, which I found hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you just got leveled by a quarterback. But
it reminds me of remember how Cutler used to just take off running and he would just plow his shoulder and just I think it was the Steelers game where he just plowed the dude over. That's what it reminds me of. Fields, I mean, he didn't have a great game passing, 167 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then the 1 interception, unfortunately, was a pick 6. And then you look at his rushing attempts. He rushed 13 times for 147 yards and 2 touchdowns. You know what I mean? And when your team is putting up 30 points a game, most of the time, if your defense isn't completely god-awful like the Bears is, you're winning that game.
Those games. Right. And that's what it boils down to. We knew the defense was going to miss Robert Quinn. We knew the defense was going to miss Roquan Smith. You can pretend that they're not going to, but those guys were, not only were they impact players on the field, but they were motivators and leaders of men in the locker room.
Right.
I'm completely okay with both moves. I think the team moved on from both players when it was time to, and they got valuable pieces. Obviously, you pretty much got Chase Claypool for Roquan Smith.
Right.
And Chase Claypool's going to be a guy that's going to be successful in this offense. You have to give him time. The Colin Cowards of the world will be very quick to judge on a pickup like that when Claypool wasn't able to produce this year with Maserati Mitch as his quarterback, or wasn't able to produce as much the year before with noodle arm Ben Roethlisberger.
Right.
But you look at his rookie season when Ben Roethlisberger still had some arm left on him, and Claypool was an immediate playmaker. This is a guy that's 3 years removed from college, people, who was very successful in college and was very good his first season in the NFL. Others say that he's got an attitude problem that could be an issue in the locker room. But ultimately, Matt Eberflus is the perfect coach for that. Matt Eberflus is a hard-nosed, no-nonsense, no BS type of coach. You see it week in and week out. He's not afraid to hold players accountable, from Justin Fields to the running backs to the entire offense and defense. He shows players where they made mistakes on film and coaches them up, and makes it very clear in each and every press conference that he does that he's going to put the best man for the job that week in situation. We saw it personnel-wise with both N'Keal Harry and Velus Jones Jr. being inactive last week.
Yep.
Coach Eberflus has done everything right when it comes to building momentum and keeping these young men motivated through these tough games. So ultimately, if Claypool has a disciplinary issue or has an attitude, that's not going to fly, and you'll see him on the bench. I know Matt Eberflus isn't afraid to do that. So it's the perfect scenario for him. You give him the opportunity to come out and perform, see what he's made of. With the deal that he has a year and a half left, I do believe it's a no-risk deal. So you've got this year and next. If you need to move on from him due to lack of production, then you move on from him. Who were you going to get in the second round that was as good or better than Chase Claypool? No one.
Or in free agency. Right?
This is not a wide receiver strong draft class, and it's not a wide receiver strong free agency. This free agency has been called a C+ class at best by a lot of analysts. You look at the list of those free agents that are going to be available, and two of the top tier free agents are Bears players right now, Byron Pringle and N'Keal Harry. That speaks volumes to, the level of talent that's going to be available during this offseason. Right. So I think that combination of factors, I love the Chase Claypool pickup. I do believe that he's going to be successful on this team moving forward, but you have to give the guy time and be realistic about what the expectation is. The expectation was never that he would come out week 1 and catch 3 touchdowns and light the NFL on fire. But I think as you see him build that chemistry with Justin Fields, he's surely going to make an impact for the Bears by the end of this season. And the Bears have only lost 7 games. I mean, yes, 7 is substantial, but they could very easily go on a run here and finish the season with 7 or 8 losses. I mean, it's not unorthodox, really. But you look at the second half of the schedule, and it's not that tough. I mean, you've got the Lions again, who should be a beatable team. You've got Green Bay, who right now is absolutely in shambles. Well, Minnesota, you played Minnesota the last week of the year, so they're probably going to sit their starters because they're going to be in playoff contention. So there's another win.
I think that one would depend on if they wrap up the week 1 bye or not.
Well, it's the last week of the season, so we'll know for sure as we approach. But, I mean, that's 2 very winnable games right there. I don't think the Bears are beating Minnesota with Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook being
I don't think they're beating the Bills either, or the Eagles. But here's the thing.
The Eagles just lost to the Washington Commanders.
They did, but I will say this. The Commanders, to me, they're one of those sneaky teams. Taylor Heineke's played pretty well. They're getting they're getting Young back, and I don't know. I think that could be a better team than people give them credit for. Now,
they could definitely be a better team than they are on paper, but the same could be said for our Chicago Bears. Right. I mean, on paper, offensively right now, we're looking pretty good as far as points scored per average, and obviously first in rushing yards in the NFL. Justin Fields' efficiency is what I really want to zero in on here. People want to talk so much about that elusive 300-yard game, but his efficiency has been phenomenal over the past few weeks. You look at the stats, the completion percentage has been at 70% or above the last 3 weeks. Justin Fields has been a very efficient passer and has yielded passer ratings 90 or higher the last 3 weeks. So ultimately, you would like to see more volume. I do understand the argument, but with the limited sample size that we've seen thus far, he's been able to perform at a very high caliber. So if he does get to a level where he's passing for 300 yards in a game this season or next year, and he still has the ability to rush for 50 to 100 yards a game, obviously it's not gonna be 100 or north every week.
Right.
But you look at that, and then all of a sudden you're putting 300 to 400 all-purpose yards up, which is what Fields has been doing. The mix has just been skewed more towards the run the last few weeks. I'm fine with it. The kid's young, he's tough, he's resilient. Let him get out there and run. Let him pass when he feels comfortable. Obviously, he's been very efficient in doing so these past few weeks, and I think that trend's going to continue. One thing that I really hate to see is the narrative that the national media has put forward. And I don't want to rip on anyone specifically except Dan Orlovsky, because I can't stand that guy.
Bro, he's awful.
Dan Orlovsky I think he's on Get Up and a couple other programs. He was the biggest Justin Fields hater at the start of the season. And now he has completely flipped the script to the fact of saying, I told you so. I told you this kid was going to be a star. No, you didn't. You said he was going to be on the bench week 2. And now you're saying he's a star and you always believed in him. We here at USN have always believed in Justin Fields. I know there were times that our guy Vince got frustrated with him, but even then he came out right and apologized and said, man, this kid's got everything stacked up against him and he's still managing to make it work. And we're seeing magic happen right here, Ace. I really do believe we are. I think next season, the Bears obviously the largest cap room in football going into the offseason, although it's a C+ at best draft or C+ at best free agency. I do believe Ryan Poles will hit on a couple guys for the offense that will help out. The Bears still have Alex Leatherwood, who is a former first-round pick, right? Didn't pan out for Oakland. I'm sorry, the Raiders. They're in Vegas now, but didn't pan out for him there. But the kid still has potential and could turn into a stud when healthy. Braxton Jones, a 5th-round pick, has played really well against the run. He's still got some things to true up in the passing game. But this team has potential, man. I mean, you look at how hard these guys play for Coach Eberflus, and I believe that goes back to exactly what I was saying earlier about his ability to lead this team and, you know, really instill those football values, the hits methodology in these young men. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do, and it's not a thing that anybody can do unless you're Jeff Saturday and you tweet that the Raiders suck, and then you become the coach of the team that plays the Raiders the next week.
And then you beat them.
Yeah. But there are very few Jeff Saturdays out there for probably good reason. But no, ultimately back to Coach Eberflus and this team. He's getting top-level production out of guys that you wouldn't even think would really be practice squad candidates. I mean, you look at a kid like Jack Sanborn on the defense. For as great as he performed last week, 12 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 2 sacks, and a negated interception on Jalen Johnson, pushing the player across from him, not even poking him in the eye.
Yeah, that was a rough day for the refs, I would say.
And that was definitely a rough call, and we've seen a lot of those rough calls over the last couple weeks, especially the PI against Miami. I'm still pissed off about that one. Eddie Jackson playing the ball 100%, and then to double down and screw the Bears on
out of the Claypool
on
one
Chase
too.
Claypool being Titanic grabbed by the defender that was literally grabbed him by the waist and lifted him up in the air. It's only the Bears, man. It's only Chicago sports teams that this shit happens to.
And I don't like to bitch about the refs too much, but like it's been
atrocious.
It's been awful,
like
for Bears.
I'm right,
and I get it; they're not a great
don't...
team, so you're not going to get the number 1 staff of refs, right? But like, there's a couple of these games at least,
but still,
that have been decided on terrible calls for the Bears.
Yeah. But still, you're an NFL referee. It's your job to be able to go out there and call plays efficiently and make the right decision when it comes time to throw the flag. And if you're gonna mess up on that Eddie Jackson one, at least give us the benefit of the doubt on the Claypool call. That would have put us at the 15-yard line with a minute left. The Bears would have shocked the Dolphins and the world would have been stunned. But no, I mean, just going back to overall productivity, Coach Nagy was never able to get this type of productivity out of guys on this team. Obviously, not a lot of those core players are left from the Nagy era. Ryan Poles has done a great job of tearing this thing down really to the ground level to build it back up the right way. And ultimately, I think him and Ian Cunningham together are definitely going to build this thing up into a successful football franchise for many years to come.
So a lot of the issues that people talked about Fields early on in the season was, he doesn't get through his reads fast enough. He's one read, and if it's not there, he's going. But like, if you go back, especially in this last game against the Lions, and you watch what the offense has been doing, is obviously the offensive line is awful, but Fields has been able to
straight garbage.
Yeah, but Fields has been able to get himself some time, and he's keeping his eyes downfield, right? And he's making plays, maybe not big, giant splash plays through the air, but he's making enough plays where he gets himself out of trouble. And then because of the threat of running, the defense has to drop down and watch him. And, you know, you've seen it with, there was a pass to Mooney down by the end zone where there was a defender running with him and then running with Mooney, and then Fields got out of the pocket and started to look like he was going to run, and the defender dropped down, and Fields delivered the ball to Mooney. You know, obviously we want these big, you know, we got Claypool, and everybody automatically thought we were just going to be doing 50, 60-yard passes down the field.
Run 4 verticals. This is Madden. Run 4 verticals, please.
But what's really been awesome to see is ever since that Thursday night game against Washington, it really seems like the coaching staff sat with Justin and was like, listen, if you feel like it's not working, just go. If you use your best judgment and make the decision, run the ball, don't worry about staying in the pocket. And I think
and they said, sorry to interrupt you, but they said Luke Getsy actually sat down with Fields in the mini bye week, as they're calling it, and watched plays that Lamar Jackson runs in Baltimore and said, okay, what concepts do you like here? What can we implement for you that is going to make you feel more comfortable?
And that's something that that Nagy never did. Nagy was so, you got to run my system, and that's the only way we're going to do it. Right. A real coach is somebody who can adapt to his players' strengths, right? That's going to get the best out of his players with how they play the game. And Justin Fields in college was a completely different quarterback, right? He was able to stand in the pocket and deliver, but he also had 13 first-round picks on that team. Right. You know, exactly. So it's a little bit different right now. I think you give this kid an average offensive line and throw a couple more weapons out there, and you will see somebody. And obviously, we're biased because we're Bears fans, but if you listen to the national media, what all they're talking about is this kid's potential. That this kid has something, right? We've never heard a Bears quarterback talked about the way that people have talked about him. Not even Mitch. Even Mitch had decent games every now and then. You know, that 6 touchdown game against the Bucks. Or
I remember that.
I mean, that's kind of the highlight of his.
All the Mitch truthers out there were like, "Oh, Mitch is the guy. Look at that. He threw 6 touchdowns and
against an awful Bucks defense.
3 of them were against completely uncovered guys." But just looking back, man, like you said, there's never been a quarterback as electric as Justin Fields in Chicago. I would almost dare to say that there's not a quarterback who's more entertaining to watch in the NFL right now. The last 4 weeks, I don't think anybody's been more entertaining to watch than Justin Fields. The grit, the determination, the ability to improvise and make plays. Like when he had that touchdown, the first touchdown run against Miami, and he pump fakes twice, like 3 yards over the line of scrimmage just to get the defenders to bite. And then he runs, and Mooney has that terrific block at the end, and he runs it in the end zone. I've told you and our longtime listeners here many times, the loudest I ever heard Soldier Field was the game against the 49ers last year that I took my father to. Sitting in the stands, 4th and 17, or no, it was like 4th and 12.
Yeah.
Justin Fields making magic happen, spinning around in the pocket and rushes it in for a touchdown. That's electric, and it's good football. It's good viewing for the fans. That will fill the seats more than a team that only lets 10 points be scored against them. Obviously, we need to find a balance. And I think, obviously, today, the Bears went out and signed a guy by the name of Ace.
Who'd they get? Taco. I seen that.
They signed Taco. Taco was somewhat of an impact player when he first came into the league with Dallas.
Yep.
He's been injury-ridden. Kind of similar story, I would say, to N'Keal Harry. He's had opportunities, but he hasn't really been able to capitalize for one reason or another.
Right.
Hopefully the Bears get Taco in here, and he helps provide some immediate support at the 3 technique, which is where I would assume
some much needed.
Yes.
I mean, it can't get worse, right?
And one of the veteran linebackers came off of injured reserve today, I believe. So it's a sign. This team's moving in a direction where sometimes the best availability is availability, right?
Right.
Players being their next man up mentality. And when you have a bunch of guys that may not necessarily be starters on other teams, you rotate, it keeps guys fresh. You see Pete Carroll do it a lot with his defense in Seattle. You've seen the Jets do it a little bit this year, rotating guys in and out. Obviously, the Bears secondary is still young, but obviously you've got Eddie Jackson back there. With Kyler Gordon, Jalen Johnson, Eddie Jackson, and Kendall Vildor in that backfield. I think the backfield's trued up for years to come here. So now it's time to focus on the defensive line as well as the linebacker positions. And I think this team has the right philosophy going forward. We got a comment here, a spam comment. Find my hot girls here. We're going to disregard that and block that user. Sorry, I did not read that before I brought it up. But
that's all right.
That user has been put in timeout. This is all Chicago sports talk here.
Yeah, man, no hot girl.
We are a family show.
Yeah, man.
But
well, yeah.
No, with that being said, man, I mean, this team is a team that is weak on defense right now in the front seven. The back four are solidified. You go out, you sign a guy like Taco, you give him a chance. Maybe he brings a little bit of spark to the middle of this defense. What do you have to lose at this point?
Exactly. Right.
That's the thing. Your defense is getting shredded for 30 points per game. So it's not like you've got a high caliber
pressures, nothing. It's just awful.
So to me, it's so odd as a Bears fan, right? Because 2018, you look at that, we had the best defense in the league when we made the playoffs. Double doink game. Everybody knows about that. I don't need to bring that up again. But that season as a whole, in its totality, wasn't because the offense was playing great. It was because of the defense's ability to take the ball away and score points. Mm-hmm. Now the script is completely flipped here 4 years later, and we're in a situation where the offense can ball out, put up points relatively with ease. I mean, this team has put up points the last 4 weeks and moved the ball with relative ease down the field, which is odd and shocking to say as a Bears fan, right? Like, it's not something that we anticipated at all.
I think I was listening to ESPN 1000, and I'm pretty sure Courtney Cronin said that this was a juggernaut offense. Like, I had to kind of take a step back, and I was like, a juggernaut Bears offense? I don't know the last
when
time.
When have you ever heard that?
I don't know if
when
I've
the Bears
ever
won
that.
The Super Bowl. Okay, so when the Bears went to the Super Bowl 05-06 season against the Colts, it wasn't because they had a stellar quarterback play and the team was out there getting it done on offense.
No. It was the defense and special teams that brought them to that Super Bowl.
In the 85 Super Bowl that they won, yeah, sure, they had Walter Payton, they had William Perry, the fridge, score the touchdown in the end zone, whatever. But you had awesome defense. You had awesome defense in 05-06. You had awesome defense in 18 when you make the playoffs. It was always more about the defense than the offense is the point that I'm trying to allude to. And obviously, for us as Chicago Bears fans, it's not something that we're used to be able to say, man, the offense is a juggernaut. The offense is really out there consistently playing well. And that leads us into the topic that we have at the bottom of the screen here, Ange. Are you worried about Justin Fields getting hurt with all of the running that he's been doing these last few weeks? And I will add to that, not only are you worried about him getting injured, but is it sustainable?
So injury-wise, I mean, I think he was taking much harder hits standing in the pocket, trying to find a receiver. I think obviously, ideally, you don't want your quarterback to be running 13 times a game, having to pick up, 3rd and 12s. And, there are a couple plays where it's like, did he really need to take that chance, but overall, I think we've seen running quarterbacks go one of two ways, right? You either go the RG3 route where you're just a flat, you're flash for a few years and then you get injured and it's over. Or you look at guys like
Michael Vick.
Lamar Jackson, Michael Vick, throughout their career in the beginning, they were very mobile quarterbacks, right? And they had flashes with their arms. Then as they got older and realized, yo, my body can't keep taking all these hits, that's where the arm came into play, especially if you look at Michael Vick towards the end of his career. You know,
when he was in Philly, he was not known to be a rusher anymore. I mean,
no.
And then when he was in Pittsburgh, obviously, as well, he could still get it done for the first down, but it wasn't his first option. He stood in the pocket and, you know, analyzed the field a little bit more. That's one thing, not to go away from the question of, are we worried about Fields getting injured? But it all ties back into his reads and his progression, right? He's going through all the reads now. You see him 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, nobody's open. Fuck, I have to run the ball.
Right.
Whereas before it was one read, tuck your head down and run.
Right.
He's making all the reads now. Guys just aren't getting separation.
And there's been a lot of plays also where like he's gonna make the throw and then something happens. Like there was a play with Darnell Mooney against the Dolphins where Mooney was open and Fields was going to throw the ball, but then Mooney turned his back to run upfield, and Fields was like, "Well, okay, and now I got to take this."
That was on the rushing touchdown,
right? And sometimes, you know, you see that happen. I think obviously you want him to kind of get away from running as often, but this year I think you're gonna do more harm to him having him stand in the pocket trying to be a pocket passer rather than letting him just kind of play football. You know what I mean?
Yeah, be an athlete, man. Let him go out there and play football. Let him have fun. Let him not have to think about it too much. Just that was one thing I will compliment Mitchell Trubisky on, is when he wasn't thinking and he was just out there playing football, slinging it around, fast-paced, playing the 2-minute drill type offense all the time. That was when Mitch was at his best. Justin Fields is 10 times the athlete and 10 times the passer that Mitchell Trubisky will ever be.
And he has more than 13 games in college before he was drafted. So
this is true.
Yeah.
This is absolutely true. But no, I mean, looking at Fields and the athleticism, man, I don't want to say that I'm worried. I think I'm a little less worried than the casual fan and a lot of the analysts that have really been saying this isn't sustainable. I will say this. I think that Justin Fields is, as I said, he's stocky-ish. He's a big-bodied guy, but he's very athletic. He's a guy that can put his shoulder down and lay a hit. I mean, he literally laid a DB out and concussed him against the Lions, and the guy had to go in the medical tent. Like, I never like seeing people hurt, but that was pretty cool to see your quarterback shoulder a hit tough enough that it takes a guy out of the game. It's like, okay, wow, this kid's the real deal.
Right, and he wasn't afraid to take that hit.
Right. Obviously, you worry about the long-term sustainability when it comes to being able to take those hits year over year. But as you said, and kind of as I want to state for the audience, I think that it's important that we understand what we have. Right now, we don't have the offensive line that's able to support the pass rush. Like, these
100%.
guys are getting bullied out there by top-tier defenders. And it's apparent. Like, sometimes guys are going unblocked and running straight at Justin Fields. You do run more of a risk in that scenario, having him in the pocket, than you do just letting him go out, be athletic, and show exactly some of the reason that you drafted him. Because obviously, the previous regime saw that athleticism in him on tape. It's clear. He was an abundantly more prominent pocket passer in college, but he did run the ball also for Ohio State at a semi-high level and did it successfully.
Right.
I can tell you this, when I see Justin Fields run to one side, and as soon as you see that spin he does in the pocket and he changes direction, it's like, okay, he's going to get the first down. I trust him, even though he's 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage, that he's going to spin out of it, run upfield, and get the first down, if not the touchdown or, you know, a 20, 30-yard gain. At this point, I have faith in our quarterback to do that. He's taking fewer hits than a lot of other guys. He knows when to slide. He knows when to get out of bounds, which kind of goes back to, am I worried about him getting injured? Not really, because he's been smart situationally.
Right.
He's only taken hits when it's a first down when it's him stretching to get a first
Right.
down or him stretching to score a touchdown. Other than that, he gets
or
out
if
of
it's like a
bounds to
design
avoid the hit.
draw where he's running right up the gut.
Right. Well, of course you're going to have that.
Right.
But overall, I mean, 70 to 75% of these run plays, he's going untouched. It's low risk, high reward when you have, I'm going to just say, a freak athlete like Justin Fields, because this guy is absolutely exceptional. And it's given me confidence as a Bears fan for the first time in a long time, Ange. We've been doing this a long time together now, and I've never been more excited than I am right now about the future of these Chicago Bears. So with that being...
I remember, we've been doing this for about 2 years together, you and me, on and on, and it's been a rough go in terms of finding positives to talk about with this team up until this point. You know what I mean? And I'm guilty of it. We've come on here for the last 2 years and I'm just downing this team because they're not making smart decisions. The play is awful, but now you see that there is a direction that this team wants to go. It's the uncertainty that kind of gets me heated more than anything. But right now you see a team that is playing hard for their coach. The general manager is looking for a certain type of guy. And to me, it's a guy that's willing to be coached. You know what I mean? A lot of these guys on this team, I think, are playing above where they should because of the coaching staff. And I'm really excited to see, next season, especially after they make all these adjustments with salary cap and draft picks. I'm really excited to see what this team has in store.
Right. Absolutely, man. I mean, this team, like you said, is just electric, and it's only forward from here.
Yep.
So let's move into our next topic. First-year head coaches. Biggest surprise and biggest disappointment.
And this doesn't necessarily have to be Bears related.
I'm gonna go Matt Eberflus for my biggest surprise as a head coach. I was on the fence when we got Matt Eberflus. You know this. You know that I was like, another defensive-minded guy. He's gonna come out here, run the Lovie Smith defense, which he is running the Tampa too. But he comes out. He's going to be defensive. He's not going to care about the offense. He gets this guy from Green Bay who's going to call the plays. Will it work? I mean, Luke Getsy was a quarterback's coach for Aaron Rodgers before he came here, right? Like, ultimately, what are you doing to coach Aaron Rodgers last year when he was still a top-tier talent before he drank the ayahuasca down there in Hawaii? I mean, come on, man. Realistically, there were a lot of uncertainties going into this season, and Matt Eberflus has been a dynamic coach. He's been well-rounded. He knows when to say the right things, how to motivate his players, makes the halftime adjustments that you need to see. That's the biggest thing for me, is when this team is struggling in the first half, which they haven't been as of late, but the first few weeks of the season, they were a second-half team by far because they were going into the locker room and making the necessary adjustments. Obviously, they're still doing that now. Just with heightened offensive success, it's not as apparent what adjustments are being made to the typical fan, but this guy's a leader of men. I love what he's doing and instituting in our team. For me, the biggest surprise is Matt Eberflus, and I do have to say, when it comes to the biggest disappointment, let's hear your biggest surprise first, Ange, and then I'll give you my biggest disappointment.
So for me, it was kind of a tie, and I know that that's kind of a cop-out, but I think that what Brian Daboll's doing in New York is wild, especially because the Giants have nobody except for Saquon Barkley.
They have Saquon Barkley.
Right. But
Daniel Jones ain't it.
No, and the defenses know, hey, he's going to get the ball, and he's just a freak, man. He's been phenomenal this year. I think that's the guy I wanted the Bears to get in the offseason.
I'm right there with you.
I just thought that,
but I'm happy with what we have.
Right. You're coming from Buffalo. Josh Allen played really well under him, and I would have liked to see that. But so I think it would be him, and then I want to give who is it? Kevin O'Connell, the guy in Minnesota. And I know
Yeah.
Minnesota has a lot more talent than a lot of these other teams that these first-year coaches are going to.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
he
You've got the
seems
best
to-
receiver in the league
Right.
and arguably one of the best running backs in the league. So,
But you see this guy come into this Minnesota Vikings team and really kind of turn the culture around from Mike Zimmer, and Kirk
Oh,
Cousins looks
definitely.
more comfortable. The team looks
Kirk
like they're more
Cousins is
together.
iced out on the jet on the way
Right.
home.
Right. Like they all just look to be playing more loose. And I think those two guys have done a great job with their team. And Eberflus also, but that's kind of a given because I'm a Bears fan. So
Yeah, but even from the outside looking in, Eberflus has done a tremendous job. And
right, with a lot less.
a lot of the national media is starting to recognize, like, hey, this guy has something up his sleeve because he's making it work with the pieces that he has. I don't want to downgrade the players that we have on this team because offensively, I think the receivers are finally starting to step up a little bit. Cole Kmet included in that. I'm including him with the receivers because ultimately he's been more of a receiver than a tight end the last
Right.
couple weeks. But no, I don't. For biggest disappointment for first-year head coaches, man, that's a tough one. I want to hear your take here, Ace, so I don't steal yours because
All right.
I have a
so
feeling I know where you're headed with
it's
this.
it's close. But I was gonna go. I think you gotta go with Josh McDaniels, right? Out of Las Vegas, because you're looking at a Raiders team that you go and you trade for Devontae Adams, right? One of the top
Right.
receiver in the NFL last year. And, you know, obviously it's not Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball, but Derek Carr has been a sufficient quarterback. And all of a sudden, I mean, he's been
I'm gonna
serviceable.
stop you there. I'm gonna stop you there. Derek Carr has not been Derek Carr since he had that injury a couple years ago. He has been noodle armish at times, and I think the Raiders messed up big time by giving him the extension that they did.
Yeah, when's his extent? How many more years he got? Like 3?
Yeah, I think so, 3.
Yeah, the only way you're getting
But-
out of that is if you.
But
trade
anyways,
that.
go ahead and continue shitting on Josh McDaniels.
I just
Because I
think-
love it. I'm all for this.
So I'm not a big fan of his to begin with. He gave me my favorite quarterback for the Bears when he traded Cutler over here from Denver. I thought what he did
was that him as the head coach in Denver?
Yeah, he didn't like
the
Cutler.
time,
Him and
really?
Cutler did not get along, so he traded.
So he went from the head coach of the Broncos to the offensive coordinator of the Patriots.
I'm pretty sure he was the OC of the Patriots. Went to the Broncos,
And then he came back.
and then he went back to the Patriots.
Right. Okay.
And
You're
then
right.
he was
Yep.
supposed to be the head coach of the Colts. And like 2 weeks before the season started, they were like, "Just kidding. I want to go back with New England." You know what I mean? So
I do recall that.
the guy's kind of, to me, he strikes me as that guy who like thinks he's way better than he is.
Yeah.
You were the OC under one of the greatest coaches in NFL history, right? So, yeah, your plays were
wait
what
a
they
minute.
ran, but you had Tom
Wait a
Brady.
minute. Wait a
and
minute. Here. I'm sorry, but are you calling Bill cheats a lot Belichick one of the
Whoa.
greatest coaches in NFL history?
I said one of the greatest, yes. Because if you're not going to call him one of the greatest coaches, you can't call Brady one of the greatest quarterbacks. Because they were both on a team for 6 of those championships together.
They misinterpreted the rules.
Well, hey, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. My buddy Eddie Guerrero taught me that at a very young age. R.I.P.
Okay, this isn't the custody of Dominic cage match.
No, but
Back to the topic at hand. Go ahead.
I just think that for
Sorry.
a guy who had Tom Brady as his quarterback and Bill Belichick as the head coach, for him to act like he's,
Anything
the
special?
shit, right? And he didn't do anything in Denver. He was awful, and now
Right.
he's in Las Vegas, and he's just as awful. To the point where people thought that he might get fired before the season was over.
Yeah, I
And-
do recall that. So while we're on the topic of coaches real quick, I was going to go with McDaniel as well. I totally was going to steal that from you, and that's why I told you to go first. We didn't talk about it in the green room, but I had a feeling that's where you were
I
headed.
mean, I could have went either way,
Uh,
but
But McDaniel, again, bum. You go out and get Devontae Adams. You've got Josh Jacobs, who's a really good running back. You've got Derek Carr, who's a serviceable quarterback.
The offensive line is decent.
Noodle arms it a little bit sometimes. Overall, there's no excuse for you've got Darren Waller. Did we forget about Darren Waller, who was like the number 3 tight end in the league?
That's sure.
A couple years ago. He hasn't been as much of an impact player this year, but you go out and you look at Josh McDaniels, and the guy's horrible. I do want to give props before we move on from this segment, though, to one other coach in the NFL, and that is none other than the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. The fact that he was yelling at Justin Fields to stop it during the game and then came out in the presser and was like, Mike McDaniel, right?
Yeah.
Mike McDaniel comes out and he's like, I was telling him to stop it. Clearly he wasn't taking my coaching advice. No, ultimately that guy, I mean, he's righting that ship. Obviously it helps that you have Cheetah on that squad now with Tyreek Hill, but that guy he's been through some stuff this year, especially with Tua Tagovailoa getting back injury and then a concussion, back-to-back weeks. They've overcame a lot of adversity, and I think he deserves a lot of credit as a head coach.
I agree.
Doing very well in his first year.
I think, though, if there was a second coach that was kind of a disappointment, I don't know if it's so much the coaching or Russell Wilson, but Nathaniel Hackett up in Denver is just brutal to, especially early on. That first game
Russell
was just
Wilson.
Awful. I mean, you would think so because look at Seattle now, right?
The Seattle Seahawks got the steal of a lifetime in that deal. You get a whole haul of picks.
Yep.
And now you have Geno Smith,
who's playing pretty well. Yeah,
who not behind a shitty Jets offensive line is looking pretty good, being able to score 20 plus points consistently.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I think obviously Denver lost big time in that deal, and they're going to be regretting it for a lot of years.
You can tell because during that Thursday night game when the Broncos were on, Richard Sherman, man, he was just like, he wanted to shred the shit out of Russell Wilson, and he just held back. But like, to me, he's always kind of seemed like a fake dude. You know what I mean? Like, let's ride Bronco country. Yeah, shut your mouth. Just shut up. Well, I was doing. The
best thing about you is you're married to Sierra. Sit down.
I was doing leg workouts on the airplane on over to London, bro. Shut up.
That's cool.
You got your whole team trying to sleep, and your ass is over here doing fucking handstands down the aisle. Come on, man.
I'd fight him if I was one of the offensive linemen. I'd be pissed.
Like, man,
you're waking me up because you're doing fucking high knees on a plane on the way to London.
And then you got a guy, like, I heard a report that, like, to get to him, you have to go through a handler if you're on the team. Like, he has his own dressing room. Who does he think he is? The Rock? Like, he ain't that good.
Yeah. No, he's not. Hey, he'll be in The Rock and Danny Garcia's league, the XFL, in a few years.
Yeah, you're right.
If he keeps this caliber play up. Oh, quick plug for the XFL, man. That's coming XFL, back. 2023.
I'm kind of excited for it. We'll get into that different show.
We will. But I can finally wear my St. Louis Battlehawks sweater again after 3 years, so I'm happy about it. But looking forward, man, to wrap this show up, let's get into our last topic of the evening. Folks, which Chicago team has the brightest future? Obviously, my guy Ace didn't do his research on how horrible the Blackhawks were last year when he made this cutout for you guys to see, because he wouldn't have even put a Blackhawks player on there. No, I'm kidding, but in all sincerity, the Blackhawks are obviously in rebuild mode, as the Chicago Bears are, as the Chicago Cubs are. The Chicago White Sox have been
I think the Chicago White Sox could go down as one of the biggest disappointments in Chicago sports history.
Yeah, they've performed way less than expected, and then they do the wrong thing and don't go out and get Ozzie Guillen to come coach this team. That was the move. Chicago White Sox. Rick Hahn, if you're listening, that was the move. You need to get Ozzie Guillen back in Chicago, but no. Ultimately, for me, looking at this, I think the brightest future for me is a toss-up between the Bulls and the Bears right now. I think this Bulls team is young, it's energetic, it has a lot of potential, but it hasn't looked so good to start the season. Chicago Bears, on the other hand, offensively are looking really good, but the defense leaves a lot to be desired. I don't know, man. Maybe it's my lack of faith in the Chicago Cubs and the way that they do free agency, the fact that they're walking from one of my favorite players, Wilson Contreras.
Yeah, that's a difficult
I don't
decision.
see the Cubs being in this conversation, man. I wish they were. Lifelong Cubs fan, and one of the greatest moments of my life, aside from the birth of my child and meeting my old
greatest
lady,
sports
was
moment of my life.
The World Series win, man. I remember being in the car and I had to pull over because I was so overjoyed with emotion, listening to that game. And then I went to Buffalo Wild Wings and people were buying free beers and stepping up on tables and shit, which kind of pissed my woman off. She was working there at the time, but it was a great time, man. That, for me, the Cubs gave me the best moment I've had in Chicago sports history thus far. And I don't see them doing it again anytime soon, unfortunately. So for me, I don't know. The Bulls trending up, but ultimately I'm going to say the Bears on this one, which is weird to say. I think the Bears have the brightest future in Chicago sports right now. What's your take, Ace?
All right, so the Blackhawks, they can't even admit that they're in a rebuild. They still keep Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves, and that team's going to be trash until you get rid of both of those guys and move on and start rebuilding.
Okay, so to that point, not to deter too much, both Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves should not be on this team, as you stated. It's a disservice to them to leave them on the Hawks at this point. Like, you have nobody around them. You are gutting this team, and you keep two guys that would be top-tier players anywhere else if they had some talent around them.
All because
because they're Chicago guys. No, they're not. Neither one of them are from Chicago. They gifted you a bunch of championships. Move on. Right. It's time to be done with them.
Yeah, it's
sorry. Go ahead.
Not only that, but then you got all those
heated on that topic.
Got the stories of all that, the bullshit that was happening, and it really put a sour taste for the Blackhawks, I think, in a lot of people's mouths, and you can see that in terms of like how little they are talked about at all anymore.
Absolutely. Go for
with the White Sox. The White Sox is tricky, man, because they always talk about the back of the baseball card, right? And you got guys on the White Sox that are supposed to be these talented, all-world players. I mean, the White Sox were supposed to be favored to get to the World Series this year. They were a complete disaster all season. Tony La Russa was awful. And
I was just going to say, though, how much of that do you think is Tony La Russa being Tony La Russa, and how much of that is the team not living up to their expectations because of athleticism, injuries, etc.?
Right. I mean,
I don't know. Time will tell this coming season.
Right. And that's the thing. You got a new coach now, right? So going into next season, you already hear that they're not looking to spend a lot of money, which is outrageous, man. And put the pieces
in place that you need to be a World Series contender.
Right.
I'm tired of seeing teams like the Astros get there. I'll tell you that. I was kind of rooting for the Phillies a little bit with our guy Schwarber.
I was too, just for Schwarber, and I thought Bryce Harper kind of deserved to win the World Series. I like Bryce Harper, but now Cubs. Last year was a weird year because you knew they weren't going to be good, and then all of a sudden they were pretty decent down the stretch, and now you lose guys like Hayward, who obviously that's no big loss, but
I'm glad they moved on from Hayward.
So am I. The guy, awesome, won a World Series, but you cut ties with Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, Javi Baez, like Kyle Schwarber. Those are bigger names than him on that World Series team. And now you're cutting ties with Wilson Contreras, who is arguably one of the key pivotal pieces you have left. What are you doing, Chicago? Right, like you're trying to build a team, right? And they're supposedly, hey, we are on the way up. We're going to be buying players this offseason. Well, you had one of the best catchers in baseball on your team who wanted to stay with your team, And you couldn't
I
even be
don't
like, hey,
understand
we'll
that.
keep you. It makes no sense at all.
So to me, not to digress too much here, but my biggest issue with the Cubs right now is, as you said, you get rid of Wilson Contreras. You don't really have any key pivotal pieces left. And this is what me, as your average, not diehard baseball fan, hates about baseball, is it's like, the argument's always, well, we have guys in the farm system who are going to be good in 6 years.
Right.
I don't care about 6 years from now. I want to see decent baseball out there in the diamond each and every year. And as a Cubs fan, we get one good year after 108 years of drought, man. Like, it's not enough.
It would have been nice to have another World Series
The fact that the
appearance.
Cubs only won one World Series with the talented team that they had out there is an atrocity, and that team should be ashamed of themselves.
They should be. And that's why they moved on from everybody. I know you kind of wanted to give the Bulls some credit. Let me just...
It's tough, man.
I'm going to say I hate this Chicago Bulls team as currently constructed. And I know, like, I'm on Twitter a bunch during Bulls games and all kinds of stuff.
You said you hate how the Bulls team is constructed?
Yes. I think, obviously, you gave Zach a max contract, right? And
he deserved it.
Why not? I guess he deserved it. I don't think he's a max player. I think he's a good player, but he's shown in crunch time to not have the best, ball handling decisions, and he can't hit the three. If you're going to pay a guy max money, he's got to be a consistent three-point shooter. The NBA is all about shooting the three, moving the ball around, getting a three-point guy open. Who on this Bulls team is a consistent knockdown three-point shooter?
Exactly. Nikola
Nobody.
Vucevic.
Vucevic? No thanks.
Vuce is not.
And people are like, oh, well, once Lonzo Ball comes back, they're going to... Dude, I loved the way that they played in the beginning of last season, right? DeMar had a fantastic year. DeMar's playing 2002 basketball right now. The mid-range game is
mid-range is dead. Don't
dead.
Let Vince hear you. I hope he's not listening right now.
I hope he is, because the mid-range is dead. Maybe not for him because he's good at it, but overall, like, you got to be able to stretch.
It's the same thing as those traditional number 5 centers, right?
Right.
Nobody wants a Shaq on their team anymore.
No, you can't. You know, the
this
league
is
is Steph
2002.
Curry.
Yeah.
It's Steph Curry. It's Trae Young. It's Ja Morant. It's
KD.
I guess Kevin Durant. Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's the future of basketball.
KD. He says, "I guess KD." Like KD isn't.
I mean, if Kevin Durant wanted to come to the Bulls, I guess I'd be okay with it. I don't think he necessarily.
I'd be okay with it.
But
it'd be all right.
I don't see this Bulls team doing anything. I think, if I'm being honest, I think they're the worst situation of all the teams, because they're
behind
in a
the Blackhawks.
Okay, maybe not the Blackhawks, but they're in a situation where they are in a rough spot in terms of the contracts they have on that team, in terms of the productivity of players that they have on that team.
Well, they went out and bought to compete now, right? That's the problem. They went out and got these guys in DeMar DeRozan, in Lonzo Ball, Nikola Vucevic. You went out and signed these guys for fairly big money deals, anticipating that you were going to be a contender either last year or this year. And obviously last year, the story was injuries and, we're injury ridden. Like, Alex Caruso ain't it. I'm not an Alex Caruso.
I mean, he's
fan.
a great off the bench guy. He gives your team a spark.
But he's not a starter.
No. Io's
has
probably
played
the best
really well
thing right now that the Bulls have going for them. And that's
but
because
is Io going to want to be there in 3 or 4 years if this turns into Gar Pax and 4 to 5 years from now we're just shaking our heads and
what does everybody talk about?
Moves.
Patrick Williams, he's going to wait till he develops and blah, blah, blah. Yo, this is his 3rd year in the league, man. Like, and I get it. He's still a young guy.
Is there a reason that other teams passed on him?
Right.
I don't know. I don't want to be that critical
guy.
of Patrick Williams in himself. I think he is going to be a really good number 4, but I haven't
He
seen
seems
it.
too passive to me personally. Like
He's got to
if
be
you-
more aggressive, for
right,
sure.
you're
And
looking
that's
for a
when he
guy
plays
with
his
his
best
size.
basketball.
Yeah, they were talking, oh, he reminds me of a young Kawhi. Yeah, but even Kawhi was a little more aggressive in terms of scoring.
Oh,
you know?
absolutely. He's afraid to take a shot, and he still is.
Right. And until that develops, if that develops, you're banking on him. And is DeMar really going to be around if that ever happens? You think DeMar's got 3 years left at this level? No.
How old is DeMar DeRozan?
That's a great
question. Look it
question.
up for me right now.
I'm going to look it up right now.
All right. I mean, honestly, no, that's a great question. But DeMar DeRozan athletically DeMar DeRozan had the best season of his career last year.
He's 33 years old.
He had the best season of his career last year for the Bulls at 32 last year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when his birthday is, but
and this isn't his first team. This isn't his second team. This is the third team he's been on.
33 in basketball years, unless you're LeBron James, is
old. Right.
I mean, LeBron James is about to have a son in the NBA next year, I do believe.
Yeah.
Like, these guys, even KD's getting on the old side. Like, the NBA is a tough game, man. It's physically demanding. Just jogging up and down that court, man, is enough to tire a big bone guy like me out, let alone playing a full game playing 82 full games, I should say, for the entire season.
And think about this, right? The Bulls gave Zach a max contract. Then he needed surgery. like you give a dude a max contract, then he needs knee surgery, and then to start the season.
Well, he needed knee surgery, but he was waiting to get the deal because he was smart.
So then you get the
which
surgery,
is very smart for him, but not smart for the organization.
And then opening night, he's sitting. He's not even playing the first game of the season to
load management.
Yeah, to manage the knee.
Like,
Dog,
get
you
the fuck
gave
out of
this
here!
dude
It's the first game of the season.
Contract.
It kills me.
If I had to pick the worst out of those, other than the Blackhawks, I think the Bulls are in a rough spot unless they can do something where they can trade. And people are going to hate this, where they can trade Zach LaVine and a couple other players to get a guy like Kevin Durant or something similar. I think this team is going absolutely nowhere. You're going to sit at a 6th seed and play Milwaukee every time and get your ass kicked every time. And we're going to be okay with that? No, I'm not okay with that. I think
I'm not going to be okay with it.
Right. I think
we need to get our guy Salim on with us again and chat some Bulls with him, because it's been a while.
I'll reach out to him and I'll reach out to him and see about next week if he can jump on with us. But I think the Bears are the brightest future right now, and I only say that because in football, what is the most important position? The quarterback position, right? And it seems like the Bears have got their quarterback, and now they can use whatever resources they have to go out and build the defensive line, build the offensive line. And you've seen it in the NFL. Teams go from worst to first all the time. And when you got a quarterback as dynamic as Justin Fields, I think, honestly, the sky is the limit if this front office can put together a solid plan for the next couple off seasons.
I definitely agree with you, Ace. I think that this team has a lot of bright spots. I'm really excited with the development of Justin Fields thus far. And hey, we're just over the halfway point of the season, so we still get to see more of this. That's the most important thing to me is, does Justin Fields have sustained success, sustained growth week over week here moving forward for the rest of the season? I truly think he's going to. I think by the end of the season, there's going to be no question that Justin Fields will be the man in Chicago moving forward for the next 10 years. Like, how great will it be to say that we know we have our guy, we have the quarterback position locked down, pending injury for the next 10 to 12 years. We have never had that as Chicago sports fans.
Right. And now, think about going into next season, right? This team isn't good. So you're looking at probably at least a top 10 draft pick, if not top 5. You have your quarterback figured out. So if you're in the top 5, you don't need a quarterback. Why not look to... Yep. Then you start getting more picks. You trade a 5th round pick for 3 number 1 picks. then you put yourself in even better position going forward. That's why I think
Absolutely.
right now the Bears are the top team with the brightest future.
One last thing about the Bears and their future before we wrap up here, Ace. I do have to say that while I agree the draft position and everything like that's going to come into a factor, I think just as large of a factor is going to be if Justin Fields continues on this upward trend, players are going to want to come here and play with him.
Right.
Because they're going to recognize, like, oh shit, that guy's going to be special. I could be the receiver that changes that. Maybe in a couple years we get an OBJ type guy that's a top tier free agent.
Right, or defensive
OBJ, but
all-star defensive players are going to be like, yo, all that team needs is somebody like me who can get to the quarterback. They're
one or two pieces away from being phenomenal.
Yep.
And that draws players to a team when they see positives. I mean, who wanted to go to the Bears last season?
I didn't even want to go to the Bears last season.
I didn't even want to barely go to a game that I paid to go to. Like, this team for the first time in a very long time is exciting, Ace. And I'm all for it, man. Bring on the Chicago Bears future. We've, as Bears fans, have too long been stuck dealing with mediocrity at the quarterback position.
Starved for quarterback play.
It's ridiculous. You know, you always see the graphics when we play the Packers, right? In this time span, the Bears have had 25 quarterbacks. The Packers have had 2, Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. Like, finally, we have our guy that's going to be that guy that cements for the next, hopefully, 10 to 12 seasons, pending injury, and he keeps trajecting upward. We have our guy for the next, I'm just going to say 5 years for now.
We have
our guy for the next 5 years.
If he's not the quarterback in 10 years, then we're in the same spot we were in.
Right. And pending injury or anything like that, knock on wood, I think he will be. So with that being said, guys, as always, we appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to join us right here on the USN Undefeated Sports Network. Of course, the Packers do suck. My guy Ace putting up a clutch last minute banner there. With that being said, thank you for joining us. Be sure to go like, subscribe, and follow us. We are on all social media platforms as well as YouTube. You can find us on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. We have a dedicated Facebook group that we are trying to grow, the Undefeated Sports Network page. Be sure to follow us on there as well as all the other platforms. We appreciate each and every one of you as always. Have a good night, and we'll see you next week.